What is up, my friends? My name is Guy and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to talk about the biggest issues in Roam research and how to solve them. Those are issues that I find incredibly annoying. So we're not going to talk about the general framework of Roam or the general underlying structure of it. This is not going to be a comparison between Roam or Notion, though of course I will mention Notion like I usually do in most of my Roam videos, but this is mainly supposed to highlight these little annoyances that I'm sure you've come across yourself at one point, and hopefully I can present some easy ways to actually circumvent these problems. So let's get started. So here in my daily notes section, I've pulled in the first couple paragraphs of a script I'm working on at the moment for an upcoming video on gold versus Bitcoin, and this should be useful to illustrate the issues I'm going to talk about. So the first two issues relate to highlighting. So I'm talking about things like this where I want to highlight the text and it drops it, or I'm highlighting just the text, but it actually pulls in the entire block. And this has to do with where exactly you drop your mouse in between the dot here and that space in between. And to be fair to Roam, they have actually improved this over the last couple of weeks. At least I feel like it's gotten a little bit more precise, but it's still annoying. And one quick way to get around this is to go into your block and just press ESC on your keyboard, and it's going to highlight the entire block and all of the bullets underneath. So that's if you want to highlight the entire block. The second issue is if you just want to highlight the actual sentence. And that is especially relevant if you're looking to turn a sentence or a word into a page after you've typed it. So sometimes you're proactive, right? You can say double brackets Bitcoin because you know that you're going to want to turn this into a page for Bitcoin. But what if you've typed down Bitcoin like I have here, and then only retrospectively you decide that you want to turn it into a page? Then you usually find yourself highlighting it, and then you can go too far, and there you go. It's not turning into a page when I double press the brackets, and that's because the entire sub block has actually been selected. One easy way around this is to use the shortcut Command Shift and then back. So the little back button here on your keyboard. So Command Shift back will automatically just highlight the text. So now you can just press your double brackets and it turns into a page. And that should really speed things up for you. Now, the second issue I'm going to talk about has to do with the sidebar. And this is something that I've mentioned in other videos before, but if you shift click on a page to open it in the sidebar, annoyingly, it doesn't automatically pull in your references. So here for Bitcoin, I'm not actually seeing all of the mentions or especially the unlinked references to Bitcoin, which is really where and how I use the sidebar the most, is by looking at the unlinked references, like I described in my How to Write Better Papers video, where I'm looking to find unlinked references around a certain keyword or around a certain topic to pull into a piece of content I'm creating. So one easy way to get around this is to just click on this number here, because that is where the references are actually hiding. You can see here there's two references, and unlinked references open up down below like so. So that's really useful. There is actually a faster way to do this. If I close this down here, and that's simply by pressing Command Shift and then clicking on the page, and that automatically opens up all of the references to the page I'm clicking on. So that is the fastest way to do this, and here you can toggle your unlinked references open and closed. So using that shortcut just saves you a little bit of time. Unfortunately, you still have to use the mouse even when you're doing Command Shift to actually click on the page. And this speaks to something that I've really been focusing on recently, which is using my keyboard as much as possible. The reason why I talk about shortcuts so often is because using your keyboard is so much faster than having to pause and go over and grab your mouse. And as insignificant as that seems in the individual instance of using your mouse, it does actually slow you down. And when you tally up these little instances of losing time, it really sums up to quite a significant amount of time that it pulls out of your workflow. And in general, having to use your mouse is a point of distraction that can take you out of the flow of working, especially when you're taking notes, when you're writing something creative. Having to use your mouse as little as possible tends to be a good thing, and people who use their keyboard predominantly tend to be a lot faster than people who use their mouse. I used to be very reliant on my mouse when I'm working on my computer, and ever since using the keyboard more, I've noticed just how much my workflow has sped up across the board. And so that is something I really try to promote, is try to use the keyboard as much as possible. And unfortunately, Roam doesn't have all of the shortcuts yet to just work on your keyboard. So in this case, you still have to use the mouse, but having to use it once as opposed to twice by having to click on that number again, and it's in quite an odd place in the top corner here too, it does save you quite a lot of time. The second to last issue I'm going to talk about has to do with divider lines. A lot of people complain that there is no easy way to do a dividing line in Roam, but there is actually a way to program a dividing line into Roam, and that command is :hiccup brackets :HR. I call it hiccup, H-I-C-C-U-P. And if you press enter, it just creates this little dividing line, which can be really nice when you have a slightly more complicated document and you want to place some more visual importance on your dividing lines. This is something that Notion can do, that Roam doesn't have a built-in function yet for, so you do have to program it in yourself. I did say I was going to mention Notion, so here we go. So that actually relates to the last thing I want to talk about, which is anything visual in Roam. So that's tables, Kanban boards, diagrams. Those are functions that have been recently added to Roam, but they really aren't very good. When we go /table, we see how this is done. And basically, you kind of have to program in the design of your table, which is perfectly fine if you're used to working in programming language. So if you program as part of your job, or if you do it, as a side hustle, or just familiar with different programming languages and the way that these syntaxes work, then this is very intuitive, and you might even enjoy it more than the sort of drag and drop functionality of Notion, for the lack of a better word, where Notion makes it really easy for you to visually design things, but in Roam, you do kind of have to go through the syntax of more programming heavy language. So I myself am not a programmer. I've probably butchered a bunch of the terms just now. If you like having visual elements pre-generated for you and then using your mouse or keyboard to go into specific sections and type stuff in or change stuff around or drag and drop things, then Notion is definitely the better choice. Another example here is diagram. So the diagram function was something I was really excited about. And then unfortunately, when you look at the execution of it all, it really is not that great. So when you go to full screen here, you can double click and you can add a first element, and then you can double click here and you can add a second element, and then you can hold down the option key to connect the two. The problem is that just look at the sizing of the arrow, the way the sizing interacts here doesn't work, and most importantly, you can't draw custom shapes for your arrows, which becomes really annoying when you have a lot of different elements on your screen and you're trying to avoid arrows crossing over each other in really confusing ways. So this is something that is in a really, really early stage, and I find it really frustrating that I can't do the kind of things that I want to do in diagram form here in Roam, because I am quite a visual person, especially when I'm planning for films and stuff like that, or just, trying to create bigger systems and outline it. And I really wish I didn't have to go into something like Miro to draw it out there and then, pull it in. Instead, it'd be really nice to have it all in one place. But again, Roam is really, a young company. It's a young app. Notion just has a large leg up on these kind of things, not necessarily with diagrams, but with most of these other functions. The last thing we can talk about here is Kanban boards. So when we go in and we type Kanban, then you have a similar problem that we have with the tables, where the first thing that pops up is basically a somewhat complicated explanation of how you can build up your Kanban board. And when I say complicated, like, this is not an incredibly complicated thing to do in terms of programming this, but it's not really what I'm looking for when I'm pulling up a Kanban board. The reason why I'm pulling up a Kanban board is to be able to tackle the problem from a different perspective, which in this case is visual. So I precisely don't want to use text or use bullets or use any kind of like programming syntax to build this thing. The reason why I'm pulling it up is because I can't get any further with just, stream of consciousnessing, text bullets onto my page or my system. I want to have a different perspective to grapple with the problem in a different way. And this really doesn't achieve it for me. So unfortunately, there is no real solution for this last point other than using Notion. And again, I much prefer Roam for most things in my daily workflow, but when it comes to any kind of system design or visual elements of my daily workflow, I do pop over into Notion because it just makes my life a lot easier. But I hope that Roam will incorporate better functionality on the visual front really soon, because if I had those functions in Rome, I would 100% want to stay in Rome and not switch over to Notion. So with that, please let me know what your biggest annoyances are with Rome. Comment down below and we'll have a chat about it, and maybe we can figure out together what the best ways are to solve these. It's nice to have such a great community of people here that all use Rome, and we're all very early to this platform, to this system. And so by having these discussions, it's also nice because I know that the programming team listens to us. They have the office hours, they want to hear from the community, and they're continuing to build this platform in a way that is most optimal for the early people who use it. But with that, I'll let you get on to the next video. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate your time. Leave a like on the way out if you want, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Cheers.